start, throughout your career, the characters and projects that you've chosen to be a part of have created a lasting impact on audiences. How did Accused come across your path? And was there a moment when you were reading the script when you knew you wanted to be a part of it?
Rarely in my 21 years of doing this has a script come across my desk that I was able to connect to
Mm.
so instinctually and naturally as I did with this one. And that starts with the fact that it's written by Carl Taro Greenfeld, who is half Japanese. I
Yeah.
myself am half Japanese. The story centers around a Japanese American family. So that being sort of the first impression, I was floored, and I was so just delighted that I had this opportunity, to be a part of this show. And then when I actually read the story, and I ended up, crying as I read the script for the first
Mm.
time. I'm like, I absolutely can't believe that this is something I get to sink my teeth into and try to bring to life on screen. Because, it really does have an emotional depth
Yeah.
that unfortunately I've rarely gotten to play in the characters I've played, and I've been doing this for 21 years, and so all that to say, I was just extremely excited to be able to take on this role and be a part of an episode that you know centered around an Asian American family,
Yeah.
and you know is designed specifically to try to make audiences feel that they can relate to this family. And so I was just, yeah, I was over the moon. I was over the moon, Kevin. Yeah.
Yeah. It definitely comes across on the screen as well. At the center of this episode is this relationship between these two brothers who have such a complex history. How were you able to build that bond with the limited time that you had to film this episode?
Well, one of the things that resonated with me about the story was how strong the theme of family was, and how
Yeah.
strong the theme of what lengths will you go to in order to ensure and protect your family. And I have four siblings of my own. I have two young children.
Mhm.
So family is extremely important to me, and so I sort of instinctually related to those themes built into this episode. In this episode, Jiro's story, we get to meet Jiro and his brother Sam just as their mother has passed away, and their mother had been Sam's caretaker ever since an accident that they experienced when they were young led to Sam having a traumatic brain injury.
Yeah.
And after she passes and Sam is put into an assisted living facility, Jiro starts to suspect that Sam might be experiencing abuse there. And we get to sort of follow Jiro in his journey as he has to decide, do I protect my brother, or do I continue to live this life of prioritizing my wife and my daughters, and be unburdened by the
Mm.
responsibility of having to care for my brother for the rest of my life the way my mother did, so
Yeah.
selfishly or selflessly. And so we get to see Jiro face these impossible moral dilemmas throughout the
Yeah.
episode, and go to great lengths in order to ensure his brother's safety. Yeah, but it was in terms of forming the bond. To get back to your original question, I was able, because I have three brothers, I was able to sort of take the feelings and the love and the care and the camaraderie I have with them and place it into the actor that played my brother, Takahashi. and we also, as TV often is, sort of designed to be on an accelerated,
Yeah.
fast track pace. We only had about 48 hours to familiarize ourselves with one another before we were on screen filming. And so we went to lunch and we sort of, walked around Toronto together and established an immediate connection. And a
Mm.
lot of that connection sort of was built upon the fact that we're both Japanese, and we could connect over our shared experiences in, trying to carve out a life and career for ourselves in
Yeah.
this challenging industry. And so, yeah, any way we can try to form that bond off screen to make it feel as authentic and real on screen, I'm all for that.
Perfect segue to this next question. But similar to what you were just saying, a theme that resonated with me was the lengths that we'll go to protect the ones that we love, which, like you were saying, creates this really morally gray area that your character gets to explore. How much fun is that for you as a creative to play in that space? And are those are the types of roles that you're most attracted to?
Kevin, I think all actors. I maybe I don't want to speak out of turn, but I would imagine all actors are most drawn to the characters that have the greatest amount of emotional depth,
Mm.
and get to experience all of these sort of dilemmas and conflicts that they have to sort of work through. And to be quite honest, oftentimes those roles are, given to, or those types of characters are set aside for either the lead or the second, lead of a particular series or show or project or film. And, for the better part of the first half of my career, I was just on the outskirts of those opportunities, doing my part, and so only in the last 5, 6, 7 years have I really gotten an opportunity to take on some of these more complex characters. And a part of that has to do with, I just needed time to build up a collection of personal experiences
Mm.
that would allow me to execute, in the way that I needed to for Jiro. And then the part has to do with the way our industry as a whole is opening up to telling more stories of underrepresented communities, and putting, Asian Americans front and center in the lead role, and putting African Americans, putting trans and deaf and indigenous people and their stories front and center. And I just think it's great to see. And as someone who's been doing this for 21 years, it's great to now experience, those opportunities opening up to me, where I get to, go deeply into a character and try to show an emotional range and an emotional life that, hasn't always been there with other characters I've played in the past.
You also shared on social media that, as a father, you want to make sure that your children are able to see themselves represented in the media that they consume. And everyone did such a fantastic job incorporating the Japanese culture and language in such a subtle way, where it's integrated into the story organically and not for tokenism. What was it like getting to collaborate with the rest of the cast, the writers and directors, to bring that authenticity to the screen?
It was great. I mean, I remember a moment where Jiro is preparing a bento box,
Yeah.
and I was cutting the tamagoyaki. It's an egg dish, and the prop person gave me a knife to cut this tamagoyaki, and it was just sort of a random, knife pulled from a drawer. It didn't have any sort of specificity to it, and I said, in this household, cooking these types of dishes, Jiro would absolutely have a Japanese blade used particularly for,
Mm.
thinly slicing eggs like this. And if you want
Yeah.
to feature this knife, let's make sure in the 15 minutes we have to try to, hunt one down, let's try to get something that looks at least as close to that as possible. Because it really is important to try to be as authentic as possible. Um, we have Jiro's daughters in the episode, refer to grandma as Bachan, and that's something I refer to my grandmother as, my Japanese grandmother. It's what my children refer to my mom as. And it was just really important for us to get all of those cultural specificities as correct as possible. Because when you do get an opportunity to tell stories like this, you want it to come across as authentic and as real and as relatable as possible. And yeah, there's a certain amount of importance placed on getting it right.
Yeah. Another theme that really came across within this episode is that you can't go through life without loved ones and family and their support. Who are the people in your own life who've helped shape you to become the storyteller that you are today, and who've been on this journey with you for the past 21 years?
I mean, I credit my mother and father for their support of me and this career pursuit
Mm.
from the very beginning. And all the I guess all the ways in which they taught me to be a good person and a kind and respectful and accountable human being. All of that, once you become an adult, becomes so valuable. And I've always said, look, you can have a career in this business simply by working extremely hard and treating everybody with kindness and respect, and then holding yourself accountable. If you can do those three things and you have any talent whatsoever, you can find success. And so I have to credit my parents for instilling all of that in me from an early age. And then as I mentioned, I have a wonderful group of siblings, 3 brothers and a sister. And then my wife is extremely supportive. And then my children obviously are the loves of my life. And when you're getting to do scenes like I got to do in Accused, where you're dealing with the characters dealing with the reality of perhaps losing something, in the case of my episode, it's losing his brother. It's losing the opportunity to protect and safeguard his brother. When you have children and when you understand how precious they are and how much you love them and want to protect them forever, it's very easy to sort of transfer those feelings onto the character you're playing and the circumstances of the scene. There's a variety of different, things that you pull from in order to produce the intended emotion of a scene. But yeah, I mean, your question, reminds me of all of the things that I had circulating in my mind, for the big courtroom scene, which I
Yeah.
can't really speak too much about. But I had thoughts of my father and the limited time I might have with him and my mother as they get older. I thought about my children. I thought about all of these things, and it really sort of reinforced for me as a human just how important family is and how important, doing whatever it takes in life to make sure they're protected and cared for and safe and loved.
Yeah. You actually answered the next question that I had for you, but without giving any spoilers, it's established very early on that your character has declined to take a potential plea deal for reasons unknown at the start, and the story builds to that reveal, which makes those final scenes all that more devastating. Like you're saying, I was bawling by the time the episode ended, and often when you're filming television, you don't shoot in chronological order. When did you film that scene, and as an actor, how did you create the space for yourself to dive into that moment? And what is that decompression like afterwards?
Oh boy. I think we filmed that scene on day 3
Oh wow.
and we did an 8-day shoot for this episode. And the scene, which was about a page and a half
Mm.
of a page and a half monologue, it was rewritten. 3/4 of it were rewritten, maybe 36 hours before I performed
Oh.
it. And so if there wasn't already a lot of pressure on me to try to deliver in this moment, after those rewrites came in, I was like, oh man, buckle in, let's figure it out. Let's find a way. You got 36 hours. And you know, as I just mentioned in answering your previous question, you really draw from all the sort of the richest, hottest sort of circumstances of your own experiences, at least I do, to try to put yourself in the right sort of emotional heart space and head space
Yeah.
to deliver the scene. And when something is written as well as this episode was, and that particular scene was, there is this sort of melding that happens between your own emotional life and the words. And then you just have to just trust that if you go on this journey and let things happen spontaneously, and are relaxed enough to let those things happen, something great could come of that. And I feel really fortunate that everything sort of clicked
Yeah.
on the day I shot this. And it continued to click and continued to click even as we shot everybody else's coverage, because I'm like, I've found the right lane to be in for this scene. And the scene is only as good as everybody else involved in the scene. And so whether I was doing the off-screen coverage for the prosecuting attorney,
Mm.
for Julia, who plays my wife, or for the jurors, I wanted to try to make sure I got them into the same energy I was in, so they could hopefully be compelled to show the same emotion that was required for this scene to be effective. And so, yeah, I mean, it was, I felt an enormous sense of relief, and also an enormous sense of satisfaction, and also validation
Mm.
after I finished this scene, because man, I finished scenes that required me to be emotional, and I walked off set and thought to myself, oh my God, I should quit acting. That was absolute dog shit. But I was very fortunate that I didn't feel that on this day. It was a good day.
Yeah, that's a scene that's definitely gonna draw on the heartstring of audiences. Like I was saying, I was bawling at like 9 a.m. this morning watching it. You you've made it your purpose as a storyteller to promote the next generation of artists who are eager to redefine the media landscape, which is why you founded 20K for aspiring young creators, like including the two young ladies that played your daughters in this episode. What
Yeah.
advice would you give them as they discover and develop their own voices and traverse this industry?
What I often tell young aspiring creatives in the Asian American community is, listen, there have been so many people that have come ahead of you to open doors and pave roads. And when you get your opportunity, you need to be ready. So absolutely do the work to become ready, because you may only get one chance. And in terms of trying to get your stories out there, you just have to write. You just have to be relentless in your sort of in the exhaustive work you put into trying to get your stories heard and your stories told. And that's one of the reasons why I started 20K, because starting my career in 2002, that's when I got my first on-camera job. There was such a deficit of representative media, that portrayed the Asian American experience in a real positive way. And so it's been a lifelong and career-long goal of mine to try to provide opportunities for greater representation, to give people their shot, and to try to fill the television landscape with more stories like Jiro's story and Accused, where the audience is given an opportunity to relate to a community that doesn't look like them, to feel comfortable with a community that doesn't look like them being in their living room, on their TV, and normalize the experience of all of these underrepresented groups. That is sort of what we're trying to accomplish as a society. It's certainly something we should be trying to accomplish in the media landscape, because, as you know, the media landscape is so powerful. And the self-esteem of the next generation, is dependent upon there being positive representations of themselves on TV, on social media, in the movies. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm excited about this show in general. I think Howard and Alex and David Shore and Fox have done a tremendous job in trying to curate a show that is as diverse and inclusive as possible, and filled with stories of all of these various underrepresented groups, and just trying to be real and authentic, and tell meaningful stories. And I'm super excited that they get a season 2 to continue this journey.
So I've got one final question for you.
Yeah.
Outside of this project, what's next for you?
Honestly, I'm very excited to see what comes after this episode, because as we were talking, I rarely, over the course of my 21 years in front of the camera, have I gotten the opportunity to dig this deep with a character. And oftentimes you can easily get pigeonholed into one type of character or another in this industry. And so I'm hopeful that this experience allows me to perhaps break out of any boxes I've been put in by the industry at large, and get some more opportunities to do great emotional character work on screen.